I watched my stepsister Emma pack my laptop, the one I'd spent 2 years saving for, into her designer backpack, and I didn't say a word. My stepmother Linda stood in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom, arms crossed, that familiar sneer twisting her surgically enhanced lips. "Don't just stand there, Vera," she snapped. "Emma needs to get to campus. Her education actually matters." My father didn't even look up from his newspaper at the breakfast table. He hadn't looked at me properly in 3 years, not since he married Linda 6 months after my mother's death. I was 17 then. I'm 23 now, or I was in my first life. Because here's what they didn't know. I'd already lived this day before. I'd already watched Emma take my laptop, the one with all my thesis research, all my scholarship applications, all my carefully compiled evidence of their abuse. I'd already felt this crushing sense of helplessness. And in my first life, that day was the beginning of the end. By 25, I was dead, broke, homeless, and utterly destroyed by the family that should have protected me. But 3 months ago, I woke up in my childhood bed, 18 years old again, with every memory of those 7 years of hell burned into my consciousness like a brand. "Of course," I said quietly, keeping my eyes down. "I hope it helps with your studies, Emma." Emma's perfectly manicured hand paused on the zipper. In my previous life, she'd preened at my submission. This time, something in my tone made her suspicious. Good, let her wonder. "It better work properly," she said, defensive now. "If there's anything wrong with it, there won't be," I assured her. And there wouldn't be, because unlike last time, I'd spent the past month meticulously preparing. I'd already graduated from MIT with a dual degree in computer science and business administration in my previous life. Not that my family ever knew. They'd been too busy sabotaging my education, stealing my opportunities, and bleeding me dry to notice when I'd secretly completed my studies online, paying for it with money I earned from freelance coding jobs I did in the dead of night. This time, I didn't need the laptop. I'd already backed up everything that mattered to a secure cloud server they couldn't access. More importantly, I'd installed a comprehensive monitoring system on that machine. Every keystroke logged, every file access tracked, every login recorded and sent directly to my hidden phone. "Hurry up, Emma," Linda said, checking her Cartier watch. "Your father's meeting with the dean is at 10. We can't be late." My father. She meant my father, but Emma called him dad too now, while I'd been relegated to calling him sir after a particularly brutal argument where he'd told me I should be grateful they kept me around at all. The meeting with the dean was to discuss Emma's promising academic career, a career built entirely on my stolen work, though they'd never know that. Yet. In my first life, Emma had used my laptop to access all my research for her freshman year and submit it as her own. She'd stolen my scholarship essay and won a full ride to Stanford. She'd plagiarized my thesis proposal and earned a prestigious grant. And when I tried to fight back, tried to prove the work was mine, I'd had no evidence. The laptop was hers. They said. The accounts were in her name. I was just a jealous stepsister who couldn't accept that Emma was the talented one. They'd thrown me out 2 weeks after Emma started Stanford. I was 19, homeless, and blacklisted from every academic institution because Emma and Linda had spread rumors that I was an unstable stalker who'd tried to sabotage Emma's career. I'd spent the next 6 years fighting, surviving, trying to rebuild. I'd done it too, gotten into MIT online, worked 3 jobs, earned my degrees in secret because I was too proud to give up. But the stress, the poverty, the years of malnutrition and untreated health problems had taken their toll. At 25, I'd collapsed in my studio apartment, too weak to reach the phone, too isolated for anyone to find me in time. I'd died alone, my MIT degrees in a folder under my bed, my revenge unfinished. God or fate or whatever cosmic force governed the universe had given me a second chance. I wasn't going to waste it. "Vera," my father's voice cut through my thoughts. "Linda tells me you're not planning to apply to college this year." I looked at him, really looked at him. Richard Chen had been a good father once, back when my mother was alive. He'd taken me to science fairs, helped with my homework, told me I could be anything I wanted. That man was gone. The person sitting at our kitchen table was a stranger wearing my father's face, a weak man who'd chosen comfort over conscience, a new wife over his only daughter. "That's correct, sir," I said. "I thought I'd work for a year, save some money." Linda's laugh was like breaking glass. "Work? Doing what? You barely finished high school." Emma's the scholar in this family. You should focus on finding a husband before you're too old. You're already 18, practically a spinster." Emma giggled. She was 3 months younger than me, but they'd always treated her like she was younger and more precious. In reality, she was just weaker, more malleable, easier to control. "I was thinking of applying to some tech companies," I said carefully. "I've been teaching myself to code." "How ambitious," Linda said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Emma, darling, don't forget your presentation notes. You want to impress the dean." The presentation notes that I'd written in my first life, that Emma would present as her own, that would launch her fraudulent academic career. Except this time, I had copies of everything with timestamps, metadata, and my own previous graduation documents stored safely where they could never find them. "I won't forget, Mom," Emma said, shooting me a triumphant look as she slung the laptop bag over her shoulder. They left in a flurry of expensive perfume and casual cruelty, my father holding the door for his new wife and stepdaughter, not even glancing back at me. The moment the door closed, I allowed myself a smile. "Let me take you back to understand how we got here, to help you understand why what's coming then is justice, not revenge. My mother died when I was 15, cancer, fast and brutal. In 6 months, she went from the vibrant, brilliant woman who'd taught me to code on her old desktop to a frail ghost who could barely hold my hand. My father fell apart. I understood that. I was falling apart too, but I was a child and he was supposed to be the parent." Linda appeared 3 months after the funeral. A widow herself, she'd said, with a teenage daughter who needed a father figure. She was beautiful, charming, attentive. She brought casseroles and sympathy, listened to my father's grief, and slowly, methodically, began to rewrite our family history. The wedding happened 6 months later. I'd begged him to wait, told him it was too soon, that I wasn't ready. He'd patted my head and said I'd understand when I was older, that he needed someone, that I should be happy to have a mother figure again. Linda moved in with Emma and everything changed. It started small, my things going missing, my mother's jewelry disappearing from my room, Linda explaining so sweetly that she'd stored it away for safekeeping, that I was too young to be trusted with valuable items. My father nodding, agreeing, always agreeing. Then it escalated. Emma needed the bigger bedroom, mine, because she was a serious student and needed space to study. I got the box room that had been storage. Emma needed a new computer for school. I could share. Emma needed clothes for her social life. I could wear hand-me-downs. The financial abuse started in my junior year of high school. My mother had left me a college fund, $200,000, carefully saved over years, meant to ensure I'd never have to worry about tuition. Linda discovered it 6 months after the wedding. She convinced my father it should be redistributed fairly between both daughters. Then she convinced him that since Emma was more academically inclined, she should get a larger share. By the time I was 17, my college fund was down to $30,000, and Emma had a trust fund worth $170,000. When I protested, my father called me selfish. When I showed him the will, Linda cried and said I was trying to break up the family. When I persisted, he told me my mother would be ashamed of me. I learned to be quiet after that, but I didn't stop fighting. I couldn't. My mother had been a software engineer, had taught me that knowledge was power, that no one could take away what you learned. So I studied, I coded, I built websites and apps and programs in secret, using the library computers, selling them on freelance platforms for cash I hid in a hollowed-out book. In my first life, it hadn't been enough. They'd taken everything, my laptop, my savings, my research, my future. They'd stolen my work and given it to Emma, then thrown me away like trash when I'd tried to reclaim it. This time would be different. The turning point in my first life had been the laptop incident. The one happening right now, but I'd been powerless then, ignorant of what was coming. This time I'd been preparing for 3 months, ever since I'd opened my eyes in my 18-year-old body, gasping with the memory of dying alone. The first thing I'd done was secure my assets. I'd rebuilt my freelance portfolio, contacted my old clients, who didn't know I was old to them yet, and started taking jobs. I'd moved money carefully, creating accounts they couldn't trace. Under an LLC I'd registered in a name they'd never think to search for. The second thing I'd done was gather evidence. Every conversation recorded on the phone they didn't know I had. Every bank statement photographed, every cruel text message backed up, every stolen item documented. I'd been methodical, patient, learning from my mistakes in my first life. The third thing I'd done was contact MIT. Not to apply, I'd already been accepted in my first timeline, already earned my degrees. I'd contacted the alumni office, explaining I was a prospective student interested in their online programs. I'd spoken to my former advisor, Professor Sarah Chen, no relation, though she'd joked about adopting me in my previous life, and asked about early admission options for gifted students. We do have a program for exceptional students, she'd told me over the phone. If you can demonstrate college-level competency, you could potentially start courses while finishing high school. Do you have a portfolio? Did I have a portfolio? I had 7 years of advanced work, apps that had made millions, code that had revolutionized 3 different industries. I had a master's degree in computer science and a bachelor's in business administration, even if they didn't technically exist yet in this timeline. I have some projects, I'd said modestly. I could send them over. Professor Chen had called me back 3 days later. Vera, I've reviewed your work. This is graduate-level programming. Where did you learn this? My mother taught me the basics, I'd said truthfully. I've been teaching myself since she passed. There'd been a long pause. I'd like to recommend you for our accelerated program. You could complete your bachelor's in 2 years, maybe less. Are you interested? I'd almost cried. In my first life, I'd fought for 7 years to earn what she was offering me now. Yes, I'd whispered. Yes, please. The paperwork had gone through last week. I was enrolled at MIT as a special early admission student, taking a full course load online, with a full scholarship funded by a grant for exceptional students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Linda and Pan. Richard had no idea. They thought I was in my room sleeping or wasting time. I was actually attending virtual lectures, completing assignments, and racing toward a degree they'd never see coming. But the degree wasn't the revenge. The degree was just ammunition. The real revenge was in that laptop, the one Emma had just carried out the door. See, in my first life, I'd been sloppy. I'd kept everything on one device, no backups, no protection. This time, I'd been smart. That laptop was a Trojan horse. Every file Emma would access, every essay she'd steal, every piece of my work she'd claim as her own, it was all documented, time-stamped, and being recorded in real time to a secure server that would serve as evidence when the time came. More than that, I'd been creative. I'd written a series of essays, research proposals, and project outlines specifically designed to be stolen. They were good, brilliant even, but they had a fatal flaw. They were all on topics I'd already published under pseudonyms in academic journals. Emma couldn't know that. She'd never done original research in her life. She didn't understand how academia worked, didn't know about plagiarism detection software, didn't realize that the brilliant ideas she'd find on my laptop were already in the public domain with my encrypted signatures embedded in the metadata. She was going to hang herself with the rope I'd carefully laid out for her, but I couldn't do this alone. I'd learned that in my first life. I'd tried to fight them by myself, and I'd lost. This time, I needed allies. That's why I'd spent the past month reaching out to my mother's family, the family Linda had carefully isolated me from after the wedding. My maternal grandmother, Susan Liu, was a legend in Silicon Valley. She'd founded one of the first women-led tech companies in the 80s, sold it for a fortune, and now ran a venture capital firm that could make or break startups with a single investment decision. She was brilliant, ruthless, and had loved my mother more than life itself. She'd also been systematically blocked from contacting me for 3 years. In my first life, I'd never known. Linda had intercepted letters, blocked phone numbers, told my father that Grandma Susan was trying to turn me against them. She'd filed a restraining order using fabricated evidence of harassment. My grandmother had been fighting in court when I'd died, trying to prove the order was fraudulent, trying to reach me. This time, I'd reached out to her first. The burner phone I'd bought with cash buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, saw her name on the screen, and answered. Vera, my grandmother's voice was warm steel. It's a status report. The bait is taken, I said. I had to say, Emma has the laptop. They're heading to Stanford right now for her dean meeting. Good. I have people watching. The moment she submits anything for academic credit, we'll have proof of the theft. How are you holding up? My throat tightened. In my first life, I died without ever knowing I had family who loved me, who'd been fighting for me. I'm okay, Grandma. It's hard being back here, pretending to be weak. You're not pretending to be weak, she said sharply. I sighed. You're being strategic. There's a difference. Weak is what they are. Small, petty people who hurt children to feel powerful. You're a warrior gathering intelligence before battle. I'd cried when she'd said almost the same thing to me the first time we'd spoken in this new timeline, when I'd finally gotten through to her office and she'd immediately known something was wrong, had immediately believed me about the abuse, about Linda's machinations. I wish I could pull you out of there, she continued, and I could hear the frustration in her voice. But we need the documentation. We need to prove pattern and intent. If I take you now, Linda will claim parental alienation and your father will back her up. We need ironclad evidence. I know, I said. I can handle it. It's only a few more months. Months we're spending building a legal case that will destroy them, Grandma Susan said with satisfaction. My lawyers are ready. The moment you turn 18, I'd come. I'm already 18, I reminded her. Legal 18, she corrected. 3 more months until the restraining order expires, until you're officially an adult and can make your own choices without their consent. Then we move. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. And Vera, I'm proud of you. Your mother would be too. I had to end the call before I started crying. The rest of the day passed slowly. I did chores. Linda had a list of them waiting on the kitchen counter, of course, and tried not to think about what was happening at Stanford. I cleaned bathrooms I wasn't allowed to use, organized closets full of clothes I wasn't allowed to wear, prepared dinner for a family that wouldn't let me eat with them. At 6 p.m., they returned. I heard them before I saw them. Emma's excited squealing, Linda's delighted laughter, my father's rare chuckle. I told you she was brilliant, Linda was saying as they came through the door. The dean practically offered her a research position on the spot. Emma burst into the kitchen where I was chopping vegetables, her face flushed with triumph. Vera, you'll never believe it. The dean loved my presentation. He said it was the most innovative freshman proposal he'd seen in years. He's introducing me to the head of the computer science department tomorrow. The head of the computer science department. Professor Michael Torres, who in my first timeline had been the one to discover Emma's plagiarism 3 years too late, after she'd already destroyed my reputation. This time, he was going to meet her much earlier, and he was going to be very interested in her work, especially when I sent him the anonymous tip I'd been preparing, along with timestamps proving I'd written everything first. That's wonderful, Emma, said, keeping my voice neutral. What was the presentation about? Oh, you wouldn't understand, she said airily, though I noticed her grip tighten on the laptop bag. It's very technical. Something about revolutionary AI applications in natural language processing. My work, my research. The paper I'd published 2 years ago in my previous life under the pseudonym V. Liu, my mother's maiden name and my first initial, the paper that currently had 2,000 citations and had won 3 awards. Emma had just presented my award-winning research to a dean as her original freshman proposal. Perfect. I'm sure you did great, I said, and meant it. She had done great at stealing. Richard, we should celebrate, Linda announced, sweeping into the kitchen and immediately shooing me away from the counter. Emma's success deserves something special. Let's go out to Bella Vista. Bella Vista, the most expensive restaurant in town, where they'd gone for every celebration for the past 3 years. Every celebration that mattered anyway. Emma's birthdays, Linda's anniversary with my father, Emma's high school graduation. They'd never taken me. On my 18th birthday last month, Linda had made me clean out the garage. Excellent idea, my father said, pulling out his wallet. Emma, darling, this calls for a new dress. Here. He handed her his credit card. Get something nice. What about Vera? Emma asked, and for a moment I thought she might actually be showing kindness. Linda's face hardened. Vera has chores to finish. Besides, she wouldn't have anything appropriate to wear. Emma shrugged, already texting someone. Okay, can Brittany come? I want to tell her about the dean. Of course, sweetheart, Linda said. They left me there alone in the kitchen with half-prepared vegetables and the growing certainty that this was going to work. Every cruelty, every dismissal, every moment of casual abuse, I was documenting it all. The cameras I'd installed in common areas were recording. The audio on my hidden phone was backing up to the cloud. Their lawyers would need evidence of a hostile home environment, of systematic abuse and neglect. I was giving them a documentary. I finished making dinner. Pasta with marinara sauce, garlic bread, salad. I set it on the stove to stay warm, knowing they wouldn't eat it, knowing they'd throw it away when they got home from the restaurant and complain I'd wasted food. I didn't care. It was evidence of labor I'd performed, of consideration they'd rejected. Another piece of the puzzle. While they were gone, I worked. I had a paper due for my MIT course on advanced algorithms. I had a client project that needed debugging. I had evidence to organize and upload. I worked until midnight until I heard them return, loud and laughing and stuffed with expensive food. I pretended to be asleep when Linda opened my door to check on me. She did that sometimes, like she was monitoring a prisoner. I heard her, sniff dismissively before closing the door again. The next morning, Emma took my laptop to school again, and the morning after that. By the end of the week, she was so comfortable with it, she'd stopped even pretending to ask permission. It was her laptop now, in her mind. She'd changed the password, logged into her accounts, filled it with her stolen work. Every keystroke was being recorded. On Friday afternoon, exactly 1 week after she'd first taken the laptop, I got a call on my burner phone from an unknown number. "Is this Vera Chen?" a man's voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Professor Michael Torres from Stanford's Computer Science Department. I got an interesting email this morning, anonymous. It contained evidence that one of our incoming students may have submitted fraudulent work. The student's name is Emma Chen. The email claimed she's your stepsister." My heart raced. "That's correct, sir." The evidence is fairly compelling. Time-stamped documents, code repositories with your name, academic papers published under a pseudonym that matches your mother's name. The email suggested I contact you directly for verification. I hadn't sent that email, which meant Grandma Susan had, or one of her people had. I should have been annoyed at the lack of control, but I was just grateful for the backup. "Professor Torres, everything in that email is true. Emma has been stealing my work for the past week. Before that, she stole my college fund, my opportunities, and my family. I have extensive documentation if you'd like to see it." "I would," he said grimly. "And Ms. Chen, I need to inform you that what your stepsister has done is a serious violation of academic integrity. If proven, she'll face expulsion before she even officially starts. But I need to be absolutely certain before I make that accusation. Can you come to campus on Monday? Bring whatever evidence you have." "I'll be there," I promised. That evening, Linda announced they were taking Emma to San Francisco for the weekend to shop for dorm supplies. Another celebration, another expense on what used to be my college fund. They'd leave Sunday night, get back Monday morning. Emma would go straight to her dean meeting, confident and unsuspecting. She'd never see it coming. I spent the weekend organizing everything. Every file, every timestamp, every piece of evidence. I compiled it into a comprehensive presentation that detailed not just Emma's plagiarism, but the systematic abuse that had enabled it. I included financial records showing how my inheritance had been stolen, screenshots of cruel messages, audio recordings of Linda berating me. Sunday night, Grandma Susan called. "Tomorrow is the day," she said. Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 7 years," I told her. "In my first life, anyway." "Your lawyers will be at Stanford by 9 a.m. Professor Torres is meeting with you at 10. Emma's dean meeting is at 11. We've coordinated with campus police and the Academic Integrity Board. By noon tomorrow, Emma's academic career will be over, and we'll have grounds to file a civil suit for fraud, theft, and emotional damages." "What about the abuse case?" I asked. "That's separate. CPS will be making a visit to your house tomorrow afternoon. Your father will be served with papers notifying him that you're filing for emancipation and that we're contesting the restraining order that blocked me from contacting you. Vera, I won't lie, this is going to get ugly. They're going to fight back. But we have evidence, we have lawyers, and we have the truth. You're not alone anymore." I wasn't alone anymore. The thought was still so foreign, so beautiful it hurt. Monday morning dawned cold and clear. Emma was in high spirits at breakfast, chattering about her meeting with the dean, about how he wanted to discuss a scholarship opportunity. Linda was basking in reflected glory. My father was already on his phone, checking stocks, barely paying attention. Vera, you have laundry to do, Linda said dismissively. The hampers are full. Actually, I said carefully, I have an appointment in town today. I'll do the laundry tonight. Linda's eyes narrowed. What appointment? Personal, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Nothing you do is personal while you live under our roof, she snapped. Cancel it. No, I said quietly. The kitchen went silent. Emma's head jerked up. My father's phone slowly lowered. Linda's face flushed red. What did you say to me? I said no, I repeated, keeping my voice calm. I have an important appointment. The laundry can wait a few hours. Linda stalked toward me, and I had to fight not to flinch. In my first life, this was where she'd slapped me. I'd been alone then, with no witnesses, no protection. This time, I had the camera in my backpack recording, and I had Grandma Susan's lawyers on speed dial. She stopped inches from my face. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, you haven't done anything for me, I said, and my voice was steady, clear. You've stolen from me. You've abused me. You've taken everything my mother left me and given it to Emma. But that ends today. Richard, Linda shrieked. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? My father stood slowly. He looked old, tired, guilty maybe, somewhere deep down under years of willful blindness. Vera, apologized to your stepmother. No, I said again. His hand twitched like he wanted to hit me. In my first life, he had. This time, I saw the moment he decided against it. Saw him recognize that something had changed, that I wasn't the broken girl he'd spent 3 years destroying. Get out, he said instead. If you can't show respect in this house, you can leave. Gladly, I said, and picked up my backpack. But I'll be back with lawyers, with police, with evidence of everything you've done. And when I'm finished, you'll wish you'd been a better father. I walked out the door, leaving, them stunned and silent, and I didn't look back. The Uber I'd called was waiting. Grandma Susan's lawyers, 3 of them, all sharks in expensive suits, were in the back seat. Ms. Chen, the lead attorney said, offering her hand. I'm Margaret Walsh. We spoke on the phone. Are you ready? I'm ready, I said. Stanford's campus was beautiful in the morning light. In my first life, I'd never seen it. Emma had gone there, not me. This time, I walked through the gates with lawyers at my side and evidence in my bag, and I felt powerful. Professor Torres met us at his office. He was a small man with keen eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Ms. Chen, he said, shaking my hand, thank you for coming. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence, and I have to say, if this is accurate, this is one of the most egregious cases of academic fraud I've encountered. Please sit. Show me what you have. I opened my laptop, the new one I'd bought with my freelance money, and showed him everything. The original files with timestamps dating back months, the code repositories with my commits, my comments, my signature style, the published papers under VLU, the tracking logs from Emma's stolen laptop showing when she'd accessed each file, copied each document, presented each idea as her own. This is damning, Professor Torres said after an hour of review. Ms. Chen, your work is genuinely impressive. This research on AI language processing, you wrote this when you were 17? Yes, sir. My mother was a software engineer. She taught me young. Your mother would be very proud, he said gently. I'm sorry she's not here to see this. My throat tightened. Thank you. I need to take this to the Academic Integrity Board, he said. They'll want to interview you formally. But, Ms. Chen, I want you to know there will be consequences for Emma, severe ones. Are you prepared for the fallout? I've been prepared for 3 years, I said. Sir? At 11 a.m., Emma walked into the dean's office expecting celebration. She found Professor Torres, the dean, 3 members of the Academic Integrity Board, and me. Her face went white. Emma Chen, the dean said formally, please sit down. We have some questions about your freshman proposal and several other documents you've submitted to this university. I don't understand, Emma stammered. but her eyes were darting between me and the laptop on the dean's desk. Her laptop, the one I'd given her. The one that contained all the evidence of her theft. Ms. Chen, did you write the proposal on AI language processing that you presented to me last week? Yes, Emma said immediately. Then, seeing their faces, I collaborated with whom? With with my stepsister, Vera. But it was mostly my work. That's interesting, Professor Torres said coldly, bad son, because Vera has provided us with evidence that she wrote every word of that proposal. Moreover, she wrote it before you even had access to it. Would Bain, you like to explain how you collaborated on work that was completed before you allegedly began working on it? Emma's mouth opened and closed. She's lying. She's always been jealous of me. This is just... Ms. Chen, we've examined the metadata, the dean interrupted. We've reviewed the file access logs from this laptop. We've seen the timestamps. We've compared your submitted work to papers published by V. Liu, which your stepsister has proven is her pseudonym. You didn't collaborate. You committed plagiarism. You stole another student's work and submitted it as your own. No, Emma whispered. No, I didn't. Mom said it was okay. She said Vera wasn't going to use it. She said... She stopped, realizing what she'd admitted. Your mother told you to steal your stepsister's work? Professor Torres asked quietly. Emma's face crumpled. She started to cry, those pretty delicate tears that had always gotten her out of trouble before. You don't understand. Vera doesn't need this. She's not going to college. I need this opportunity. I deserve this. What you deserve, the dean said, standing, is to be expelled from this university before you've even officially enrolled. Emma Chen, your admission is revoked effective immediately. You are banned from this campus. If you attempt to apply to any other academic institution, we will be notifying them of this incident. Emma's tears turned to sobs, then to screams. You can't do this. My mom will sue. My dad is Richard Chen. He's important. Your father, Margaret Walsh said, speaking for the first time, is currently being served with papers for theft, fraud, and child abuse. I suggest you call home, Ms. Chen. I think you'll find your family has bigger problems than your expulsion. We left Emma there, screaming and crying in the dean's office. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired and sad and older than my 18 years. First victory, Margaret said as we walked across campus. How does it feel? Like I can breathe again, I admitted. My phone rang, Grandma Susan. Vera, CPS just left your house. They've opened an investigation based on the evidence we provided. Your father tried to refuse them entry, but I had a judge on standby. They're documenting everything, your room, the financial records, the abuse. The police are there now too, executing a warrant to seize computers and financial documents. What about Linda? I asked. In custody, Grandma Susan said with satisfaction. Turns out, when you have evidence of someone systematically stealing from a minor, filing false restraining orders, and committing fraud, the police take it seriously. She's being charged with multiple felonies. Your father is next. The DA is building a case for financial abuse and neglect. I stopped walking, suddenly dizzy. It's really happening. It's really happening, she confirmed. Vera, I'm sending a car for you. You're coming home, to my home. You're never going back to that house. I've already filed emergency custody papers. By tonight, you'll be legally under my guardianship until you turn 18 officially. Then you'll be free. Grandma, I whispered. Thank you. Thank me by living your life, she said fiercely. Thank me by being brilliant and happy and everything your mother knew you could be. Now get in the car. We have a family reunion to plan. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Emma tried to fight the plagiarism charge, but the evidence was too comprehensive. She threatened to claim I'd hacked her computer, but the forensics showed she'd voluntarily used my laptop, accessed my files, and submitted them under her name. She tried to say I'd given her permission, but the recordings proved otherwise. In the end, she was blacklisted from every major university. Last I heard, she was working retail and blaming me for her failures. Linda's trial was faster. The evidence of financial fraud, theft, and child abuse was overwhelming. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. She screamed at me during the sentencing, called me a liar and manipulator, said I'd destroyed her family out of jealousy. The judge added 6 months for contempt of court. My father was harder. He wasn't criminally charged. The DA said there wasn't enough evidence to prove he'd knowingly participated in Linda's schemes. But the civil case was different. Grandma Susan's lawyers tore him apart. They proved he'd allowed my inheritance to be stolen, had permitted systematic abuse, had failed in his duty as a parent. The judge ordered him to repay every penny that had been taken from my college fund, plus damages for emotional distress and lost opportunities. He tried to talk to me once at the courthouse. "Vera, please, I know I failed you. I was weak. I was grieving, but I'm still your father." "No," I said quietly. "My father died with my mother. You're just the man who let his new wife destroy his daughter. Don't contact me again." He'd aged 20 years and 20 weeks. Good. I moved in with Grandma Susan to her beautiful home in Palo Alto. She gave me my mother's old room, preserved just as she'd left it when she'd moved out to marry my father. There were pictures of my mother everywhere, as a child, as a teenager, graduating from MIT on her wedding day. My grandmother had kept every memory alive, waiting for the day she could share them with me. "Your mother used to code right at that desk," Grandma Susan told me the first night, pointing to a vintage wooden desk by the window. "She built her first app when she was 16. A scheduling program for my company. It was brilliant. I used it for 5 years before we upgraded our entire system." I touched the desk reverently. In my first life, I'd never known this. I'd never known my mother's history, her accomplishments, her legacy. Linda had erased all of it, replaced it with her own narrative of what our family should be. "Tell me about her," I asked. "Tell me everything." We stayed up until 3 in the morning, my grandmother sharing stories I'd never heard. My mother hadn't just been a good engineer, she'd been legendary. She'd designed security systems that were still considered unbreakable. She'd mentored dozens of women in tech. She'd turned down offers from Google and Apple because she'd wanted to work on projects that mattered, that helped people. "She would have taught you all of this," Grandma Susan said, wiping tears from her eyes. "She had plans for you two to work together. She was going to bring you into the company when you turned 18, teach you everything she knew. And then she got sick, and Richard—" She stopped, composed herself. "Richard let that woman erase your mother's memory. He let Linda steal not just your inheritance, but your history. That I will never forgive." "I won't either," I said. The next morning, I woke up in a real bed, in a room that was mine, in a house where I was wanted. Grandma Susan had made breakfast, actual breakfast, not leftover scraps or the meals I'd had to prepare for others. We ate together at a table where I was welcome, where my opinions mattered, where I was seen as a person rather than a servant. "I've been thinking," she said over coffee. "You're enrolled at MIT Online, which is excellent. But Vera, you're already working at a graduate level. What if we accelerated your timeline even more?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if you completed your bachelor's in 1 year instead of 2? You've already done this once in your first life. You know the material. You could test out of half your classes, take a compressed course load for the rest. By this time next year, you could have your degree." "And then what?" I asked. She smiled. "Then you join my company. Not as an intern or an entry-level developer, as a full partner. I'll fund your projects, mentor you in the business side, and introduce you to every major player in Silicon Valley. In 3 years, you'll have your own venture capital firm. In 5, you'll be one of the most influential people in tech." It was my mother's plan, updated for a new generation. It was everything I dreamed of in my first life, everything I'd died without achieving. "Yes," I said. "Yes, let's do it." The year that followed was intense. I threw myself into my studies with single-minded focus. I tested out of 20 credits in the first month alone. I took 6 classes per semester when most students took 4. I worked on Grandma Susan's projects during breaks, applying my knowledge to real-world problems, building a portfolio that would have taken most people a decade to compile. Emma tried to contact me 3 times. First, she sent apologetic emails claiming she'd been manipulated by Linda, that she was sorry, that she wanted to make things right. I blocked her. Then she sent angry messages saying I'd ruined her life over nothing, that plagiarism wasn't even a big deal, that I was vindictive and cruel. I blocked her again. Finally, she showed up at Grandma Susan's house. Security didn't let her pass the gate, but I watched her on the cameras crying and pleading, saying she just wanted to talk. "Do you want to see her?" Grandma Susan asked. I thought about it. In my first life, I'd wanted so desperately for Emma to acknowledge what she'd done, to apologize, to see me as human. I'd wasted years wanting her validation. "No," I said. She made her choices. She can live with the consequences." Emma left. I never saw her again. My father tried too, but only once. He sent a letter through his lawyer now that he was forbidden from contacting me directly. It was full of excuses and self-pity, explaining how he'd been lonely after my mother died, how Linda had seemed like a lifeline, how he'd never meant for things to go so far. "He wants you to know he's paid back the money," Grandma Susan said, reading the letter with disgust. "Like that fixes everything. Like stealing from his own child is somehow forgivable if he eventually returns what he stole." "Does he ask to see me?" I asked. She scanned the letter. "He says he hopes someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive him. That he understands if you never want to see him again, but he'll always love you." "That's not love," I said quietly. "Love is what Mom did, saving money for my future, teaching me skills that would last a lifetime, believing in me. Love is what you're doing, fighting for me, protecting me, helping me build a life. What he did was weakness, selfishness, cowardice." "Do you want to respond?" Grandma Susan asked. "No, he doesn't deserve my words. Let him live with his guilt. Maybe it'll make him a better person, though I doubt it." I never heard from him again either. Meanwhile, my life transformed. I finished my bachelor's degree in 11 months, graduating summa cum laude with a 4.0 GPA. MIT offered me a full scholarship for their master's program. I accepted, knowing I could complete it in a year while working for Grandma Susan. Professor Chen, Sarah Chen, my advisor, became a friend and mentor. She didn't know I'd already completed these degrees in another life, but she recognized something in me, a drive and knowledge that went beyond normal student experience. "You remind me of someone," she said once during a virtual meeting. "A student I worked with years ago, brilliant woman, but she'd been through hell. Fought her way through MIT while working 3 jobs, lived in poverty for years, graduated at the top of her class, and then just disappeared. I always wondered what happened to her." "What was her name?" I asked, though I knew. "V. Liu," she said. "She published under her mother's maiden name. Never wanted recognition, just knowledge. I tried to find her after she graduated, wanted to offer her a position, but she'd vanished. I still wonder sometimes if she's okay." "I think she is now," I said softly. "I think she got a second chance." Professor Chen looked at me strangely. "Basson? You know, your last name is Chen too, and your work style reminds me so much of V. Liu's. The way you approach problems, your coding signature, even some of your phrasing in papers. Maybe she inspired me," I said. "Maybe we're kindred spirits." She smiled. "Maybe. Well, whoever V. Liu was, she'd be proud of you, Vera. You're going to change the world." I was already changing it. Grandma Susan had given me a project, redesigning her company's entire infrastructure to be more efficient, more secure, more innovative. I'd completed it in 3 months, implementing changes that increased productivity by 40% and saved millions in operating costs. "You're ready," she announced at dinner one evening. "I'm making you a partner. 20% stake in the company effective immediately, and I'm funding your first solo venture." "Grandma, I can't accept." "You can, and you will," she said firmly. "This is your mother's inheritance, Vera. The real one, not the money that was stolen. This is her legacy, her company, her dream, your family, and this is yours by right. I cried again. I seem to cry a lot these days, but they were good tears, healing tears. The partnership was announced the following week. Silicon Valley took notice. A 19-year-old partner in Lou Ventures. The press wanted interviews, tech blogs wrote articles. Competitors started paying attention. Some of them had worked with my father, some had invested in his projects. When they reached out to congratulate me, asking if I'd reconcile with my father now that I was successful, I set the record straight. Richard Chen allowed his wife to steal my inheritance, abuse me for years, and nearly destroy my future, I said in one interview. He chose comfort over conscience, a new wife over his daughter. I have no relationship with him, and I never will. Success doesn't erase abuse. Money doesn't fix betrayal. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. The interview went viral. People started talking about financial abuse, about children's rights, about the importance of protecting inheritances. Linda's case became a reference point. Emma became a cautionary tale. I became a symbol of survival and success. My first solo project was an app designed to help abuse victims document evidence and connect with resources. It had encrypted storage, legal templates, direct connections to lawyers and social services, and AI that could help identify patterns of abuse that victims might not even recognize themselves. Call it Phoenix, Grandma Susan suggested, rising from the ashes. We launched Phoenix 6 months later. Within a week, we had 100,000 downloads. Within a month, 1 million. The app was helping people, really helping them. I got messages from users who'd escaped abusive situations because Phoenix had given them the tools to fight back. You're saving lives, Professor Chen told me when I presented the project to my MIT ethics class as a case study. This is what technology should do: empower the vulnerable, expose the corrupt, create justice where the system fails. I was 20 years old when Emma reached out one final time. Not to me directly, she wasn't that stupid, but through a mutual acquaintance from high school who didn't know our history. Emma wanted me to tell you she's getting married, the girl said awkwardly during a chance meeting at a coffee shop. She wanted you to know she's happy, that she's moved on. She said to tell you she forgives you. I laughed. I couldn't help it. She forgives me? That's what she said. She said she's found peace and she hopes you can too, and that she's sorry things got so out of hand, but she's forgiven you for overreacting. Tell Emma, I said carefully, that I don't need her forgiveness. Tell her that I'm not the one who committed fraud, who stole another person's work, who destroyed someone's future. Tell her that I'm a partner in a multi-million-dollar venture capital firm, that I'm changing the world, that I'm happy and successful and loved, and tell her that I hope her husband knows what she's capable of, because people who steal once usually steal again. The girl's eyes widened. I didn't know. She said you two just had a falling out, that it was a family misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. It was systematic abuse, theft, and fraud. She went to prison for it. Those are facts, not opinions. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with Stanford's president about a new scholarship fund I'm establishing for abuse survivors. I walked away, leaving her stammering. The scholarship fund, the Vera Liu Chen Memorial Scholarship, named for my mother and myself, was announced the next month. It would provide full rides to Stanford for students who'd overcome abusive home situations, who'd lost opportunities to family betrayal, who'd fought their way up from nothing. The first recipient would receive $200,000, the exact amount Linda had stolen from me. I gave the announcement speech at Stanford in the same auditorium where Emma had presented my stolen work 2 years earlier. Abuse doesn't end when you escape, I told the assembled crowd of students, professors, and press. The trauma lingers. The stolen time, the lost opportunities, the damage to your self-worth, those things take years to heal. But survival is possible. Success is possible. Justice is possible. I'm proof of that. This scholarship is proof of that, and every student who receives it will be proof that abusers don't win, that thieves don't prosper, that courage and persistence and truth matter more than cruelty and lies. The auditorium erupted in applause. I saw Professor Torres in the front row beaming with pride. I saw Grandma Susan wiping tears. I saw journalists frantically taking notes, already composing headlines about the tech prodigy. who'd turned her abuse into activism. I saw Emma in the back trying to slip out unnoticed. She'd crashed the event, probably hoping to confront me or cause a scene. But when our eyes met across the auditorium, she was the one who flinched. She was the one who looked away. She was the one who ran. I let her go. She wasn't worth my time anymore. By the time I was 21, I'd completed my master's degree, launched 3 successful apps, and made my first million from investments. Grandma Susan had taught me everything about venture capital, about spotting promising startups, about building relationships in Silicon Valley. I'd learned from the best, and I'd inherited my mother's gift for seeing potential where others saw risk. "You're ready to run your own firm," Grandma Susan announced at my 21st birthday party, a small gathering of family friends, MIT professors, and tech industry leaders. No one from my old life was there. I'd left them all behind. "I thought I'd work for you for a few more years," I protested. "You've learned everything I can teach you," she said. "Now you need to build something that's entirely yours. I'll back you with seed funding, introduce you to investors, help you however I can. But Vera, you need your own empire, your own legacy. Your mother would want that." She was right. My mother had built her own path, made her own name. I needed to do the same. I founded Chen Ventures 6 months later. The focus was on funding projects that promoted social good, apps for abuse victims, platforms for underprivileged students, technologies that democratized education and opportunity. I wanted to help people like me, people who'd been knocked down and needed a hand up. The firm was profitable within a year, revolutionary within 2. By the time I was 23, the age I'd been when I died in my first life, I was one of the youngest and most successful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. I'd also become a voice for survivors. I gave talks at universities about recognizing financial abuse. I consulted with lawmakers on protecting children's inheritances. I funded research into the psychological impacts of familial betrayal. I used my platform, my money, and my influence to make sure what happened to me wouldn't happen to others. "You've changed thousands of lives," Professor Chen told me when I returned to MIT to give a commencement speech. "Students tell me they're inspired by your story, by your resilience. You've turned trauma into purpose." "I had help," I said, thinking of Grandma Susan, of Professor Chen herself, of all the people who'd supported me in this second life. "No one succeeds alone." "No," she agreed. "But not everyone has the strength to accept help, or the courage to fight back, or the vision to see beyond their own pain. You do. That's special." The commencement speech was one of the most important things I'd ever done. I stood in front of thousands of graduates and told them my story, not all of it, not the rebirth part, but the abuse, the theft, the fight for justice, the ultimate triumph. "I was supposed to be destroyed," I said. That was the plan. Break me down, steal everything, throw me away. I was supposed to end up homeless, hopeless, erased. Instead, I'm here. I'm successful. I'm happy. I'm making a difference. Because I refuse to be what they tried to make me. I refuse to accept that their cruelty defined my destiny. And you, all of you, have that same power. Whatever you've been through, whatever obstacles you've faced, whatever people have told you that you can't be, prove them wrong. Live well, succeed spectacularly. That's the best revenge and the sweetest victory. The graduates gave me a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. I was 24 when I got a message that Linda had been released from prison early for good behavior. She'd served 2.5 years of her 3-year sentence. Emma had picked her up from the facility, and according to the news reports, yes, her release made the news, I was that well known now, they were living together in a small apartment in a bad neighborhood. "Are you worried?" Grandma Susan asked when she saw me reading the article. "No," I said honestly, "Akian. She can't hurt me anymore." "None of them can. I have security, lawyers, resources, and most importantly, I have people who love me. Linda's just a bitter woman who destroyed her own life through her own choices. She's not my problem." "She might try to contact you," Grandma Susan warned. "People like that always think they deserve forgiveness. that enough time passing erases what they've done. If she does, I won't respond, I said. She's a stranger to me, less than a stranger. She's a cautionary tale, nothing more. Linda did try to reach out through a letter sent to my office. My assistant screened it and asked if I wanted to read it. No, I said, send it back unopened. Block any future attempts. She made her choices. I've made mine. We have nothing to say to each other. The letter was returned. Linda didn't try again. My father did, though. On my 25th birthday, the age I'd been when I died in my first life, a package arrived at my office. Inside was a letter and a small velvet box. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won. The letter was shorter than his first one years ago. It said, Vera, I know I have no right to contact you. I know I destroyed our relationship beyond repair, but today you turned 25 and I can't stop thinking about your mother. She would have been so proud of you. She always said you were destined for greatness, and she was right. I was wrong. About everything, about Linda, about how I treated you, about prioritizing my own comfort over my own child. I've spent years trying to understand how I became the kind of father who could let his daughter be abused. I have no good answers, just excuses, and you've heard enough of those. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you too, even though I have no right to be. And I wanted you to have this. Your father, Richard. Inside the velvet box was my mother's wedding ring. Not the one she'd been buried with. A different one I'd never seen. An inscription inside read, For Vera, my greatest creation, love, Mom. I called Grandma Susan immediately. Did you know about this ring? Your mother had it made when you were born, she said softly. She planned to give it to you on your 25th birthday. She said 25 was when she'd really figured out who she was, and she wanted you to have it when you reached that milestone. Richard must have kept it all these years. I looked at the ring, at the inscription, at the proof that my mother had loved me, had planned for my future, had believed in me before I'd even learned to walk. Do you want to see him? Grandma Susan asked gently. To say thank you? I thought about it. Thought about the father he'd been when my mother was alive. Thought about the man he'd become after she died. Thought about the years of pain and betrayal. Thought about the fact that he'd kept this ring through everything. Through Linda's manipulations and my exile and the trial and the years of silence. No, I said finally. But I'll send a thank you note. A brief one. He gave me something that was rightfully mine. That deserves acknowledgement, even if it doesn't deserve reconciliation. I sent a card that said, Thank you for returning what was always mine. Mom would have wanted me to have it. That was the right thing to do. It doesn't fix the past, but it honors her memory. That matters. I didn't sign it with love. I signed it Vera Liu Chen, my mother's name and mine together, my identity, claimed and displayed. He didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to. Now, at 25 in this timeline, 7 years after my rebirth and the age I'd been when I died, I sit in my corner office in downtown San Francisco, looking out at the city my mother loved. I'm the CEO of Chen Ventures, one of the most influential people in tech, a multimillionaire many times over. I have a team of brilliant people working for me, projects that are changing lives, a future that's limitless. More importantly, I have Grandma Susan, who treats me like the daughter she always wanted. I have Professor Chen, who's become a dear friend. I have a chosen family of people who value me, respect me, love me. I wear my mother's ring every day. It reminds me where I came from, what I survived, and who I'm meant to be. Last week, I got an email from a young woman who'd used my Phoenix app to escape an abusive family situation. She wrote, Miss Chen, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but I wanted to thank you. Your app saved my life. I was trapped, scared, and didn't know where to turn. Phoenix helped me document abuse I didn't even realize was abuse. It connected me with lawyers who worked pro bono. It gave me a plan when I had none. I'm free now. I'm safe. I'm going to college on the scholarship you created. I'm going to study computer science like you did, like your mother did. I'm going to use what you taught me. That survival isn't enough, that success is possible, that victims can become victors. I'm going to make you proud. Thank you for fighting back. Thank you for winning. Thank you for showing people like me that we can too. I cried when I read it. Good tears, healing tears. This is why I was given a second chance, not just to save myself, but to save others. Not just to defeat my abusers, but to prevent abuse from defeating others. Not just to reclaim my own life, but to help others reclaim theirs. Emma is working retail, jumping between jobs, blaming everyone but herself for her failures. Linda lives in a small apartment, isolated and bitter, blacklisted from the social circle she once cherished. My father is alone in a house too big for one person, haunted by the ghost of what he destroyed. And me? I'm here. I'm thriving. I'm powerful. I won. Not because I was reborn with foreknowledge, though that helped. Not because I had my grandmother's resources, though that mattered. I won because I refused to be broken, because I turned pain into purpose, because I understood that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success. They tried to erase me. Instead, I became unforgettable. They tried to steal my future. Instead, I built an empire. They tried to break my spirit. Instead, I changed the world. I look at my mother's ring, at the inscription that says, I'm her greatest creation, and I finally understand what she meant. Not just me as a person, but who I'd become. The survivor, the fighter, the victor. I made you proud, Mom. I whisper to the window, to the city, to the sky. I made us both proud. My phone buzzes. It's Grandma Susan. Dinner tonight? I want to discuss your expansion plans. Also, I love you. I smile and text back, I love you too. I'll be there. I close my laptop, straighten my mother's ring on my finger, and stand. I have a meeting with a promising startup, then a consultation with lawmakers about children's financial rights, then dinner with the woman who saved me. I have a life, a real life. The one I was always meant to have. They gave Emma my laptop, thinking they'd won. They thought they'd stolen my future, my opportunity, my worth. They never knew I'd already graduated. They never knew I'd already surpassed them. They never knew that every theft, every cruelty, every moment of abuse was just building evidence for their own destruction. They never knew I was always 3 steps ahead, not because I was reborn, but because I was my mother's daughter, brilliant, strategic, and unbreakable. They gave her my laptop. I gave them justice. And I gave myself everything they tried to take. I won.